this next speaker, I have absolute love and respect for this man. He is an absolute stalwart. And these guys are now just telling me that it's now changed a little bit. But I've still got absolute love and respect for this man too, don't worry. Absolute love and respect, because in getting to meet this man, Mr. Micheal Rose, the CEO of Allens, also a director on the Business Council of Australia. I've had some time to really sit down with this gentleman and clearly start to understand how the corporate sector work, what their thinking is, and how it is they're driving change from a corporate sector environment, and how they see they're going to work with the Empowered Communities Group to continue to drive change as we move into the future. So I'd like to call up Micheal Rose.
Hi everyone, thank you Sean. Can I also begin by acknowledging the traditional owners, paying respect to their elders past and present, and thanking them for their invitation and for their welcome and hospitality while we're here. When these leaders announced the Empowered Communities Initiative here at Garma last year, one of the principles that they spoke about was the involvement of corporate Australia, the involvement of business in the Empowered Communities Initiative. And the reason they spoke about that, the reason they identified it as an important principle for empowered communities, was that they recognised that business had capabilities to contribute to the design of the empowered communities model, but also they recognised that business could contribute in a meaningful, sustained and long-term way to the implementation of their vision for empowered communities. And I want to speak very briefly about those two ideas. Firstly, the immediate implementation idea. In the last 12 months, through Jarwin, I'm going to say Jarwin twice more, in fact, Jarwin. Through Jarwin, the business community has contributed 40 secondees, each of those secondees for a 3-month period. They have, in fact, given 3 years of professional collaboration and advice and commitment to the Empowered Communities Initiative in just 12 months. 3 years of very extensive investment of people's time and energy and intellect into the design of the Empowered Communities Initiative. In addition, they've given $3 million worth of in-kind contribution to empowered communities, and those things taken together have enabled these leaders to get on with their important vision while also getting on with their day jobs, which are important day jobs in their communities. And so that collaboration between business and these leaders and their communities has been really significant in moving the project forward. But the heavy lifting will start when the empowered communities idea becomes realised in each of these communities, because that's the point at which business, and when I talk about business, I'm talking about very big businesses and also very small businesses, but businesses across the spectrum will have an important role to play in the realisation of the empowered communities idea. And I think that role really falls into 5 categories. The first and the most important is that businesses create jobs. And the central part of what Empowered Communities is looking to do is to drive employment and opportunity in these communities. And so businesses create jobs. There are big national businesses, the big mining companies, the big banks, businesses that reach right across urban, rural and regional Australia. They all have a role to play. So do the important local corporations like Gumach and similar organisations in other parts of the country. And in very urban areas, like Sean's area on the Central Coast, just small business that exists on the high street of suburban Australia and country town Australia. These are the businesses that create jobs. Those jobs create training opportunities. They create opportunities for families to consolidate their wealth. They create opportunities for families to ensure that their children are moving forward in the way that they want them to. So that's the first job, supporting employment by creating jobs, by providing jobs to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and by driving that expectation around employment into their own supply chains, to their suppliers, the people who will work with them. The second important part is investing in community. And we saw a really, I think, very significant example of that just a little while ago when Phil made the announcement concerning Rio Tinto's investment into the mining training here, and also yesterday with the opening of the Learning Centre. Investing into community to support the institutions that help build resilience in community and allow people to realise their full potential. Investing in the schools, investing in training opportunities, investing in the pathway programs that bring kids to school or keep kids out of juvenile detention. They are the sorts of things that businesses right around the country support, have been supporting for a long time, and will continue to support. And inside the Empowered Communities model, that support can take on, I think, very significant meaning and be a really important plank of what business can do. The third idea is the development of products and services for communities. And Marcia touched on this earlier today when she talked about the development of very specific financial services for communities. But services that recognise the employment patterns that might exist within a community. Services which recognise the particular difficulties, for example, of remoteness, or particular difficulties which arise, or not even difficulties, just opportunities that arise because of different demographics, different accessibility to goods and services. And so that idea of developing goods and services is going to be critical, and really critical, I think, a critical role for Indigenous businesses, which understand their communities a lot better than businesses where decisions are made a long way away, or perhaps even in another country. The fourth area is direct engagement. And again, this is an area where business has already been very significantly involved with community. Direct engagement in programs that are providing education to children. Direct engagement with the development of leadership skills in community leaders. And a lot of that direct engagement does come through organisations like Jarwin, through other organisations that are represented here, who work with corporations to build skill, capacity and resilience in communities by working with people and making their people available for that. And finally, the role I think that business can play in empowered communities is using their influence. And businesses have a lot of influence, and that influence sometimes depends on their size and sometimes it doesn't. Business, for example, the 100 Australian businesses that make up the Business Council of Australia, the largest 100 companies in Australia, have extraordinary influence when it comes to the way in which they have discussions with government, but also the way in which they have discussions with their employees. They employ millions and millions of people, and they can, if they decide to support, for example, constitutional recognition, start to shift the discussion in relation to recognition, start to shift the discussion in relation to reform. They also have big influence in the communities that they serve. And so those three areas of influence are all influence that business leaders can work towards and aim at in order to assist these leaders with their vision for reform and their vision for the future of their communities. What's in it for business? This is an area that I've heard discussed best actually by some of the mining clients that I've worked with in my career. When they talk about their engagement with community, they say, we're not doing this necessarily to be nice people, we're doing it from enlightened self-interest. We're doing it because we recognise that our future is a future which depends upon the success of the communities in which we operate. And that applies not just for mining companies, it applies to all businesses in Australia. Businesses in Australia need a prosperous Australia in order to succeed. Businesses in Australia need the communities in which they operate to be prosperous communities. And I mean prosperous in the full sense, not just in a financial sense. And so for them, I think for business, the opportunity is the potential that sits in communities. Potential employees, potential customers, potential ideas for their business. They are the things that are in this for business. There's another side to this also for business. I look at my own business, which is a law firm. We send secondees through Jarwin. We do pro bono work for many communities and many organisations. And what I see in that is transformational change in the people that are engaged in that work. A change which actually allows them to start thinking about Australia and their place in Australia in a different way. And that kind of idea, if you can introduce the idea of transformational change into a business, it's extraordinarily powerful. I'm going to finish, but Sean asked me if I would say something about my own journey. There's a bit of own journey stuff here. I'll just be very brief about this. For me, my engagement with Indigenous communities and Indigenous businesses really began in earnest about 6 or 7 years ago as my firm was preparing its first Reconciliation Action Plan. And I spoke to a friend of mine, a Wiradjuri man, who was at the time a professor at the University of Western Sydney. And I said, what should I do? And what should my firm do? And he said, what you should do is you should just calm down and you should listen. And he said, reconciliation is not something that you are going to do for me. Reconciliation is something we are going to do for each other. And if you calm down and if you listen, then your path in reconciliation will change you. You will come to learn things you did not expect to learn, and you will have an appreciation of the country that you live in that you don't currently have. His exact words were, I would love you to know this country the way I know this country. And so that was his invitation to me, an invitation I think that Stephen Watton Patrick made to us all this morning when he said, go out and hunt. So it's a bit more polite than the message I got, but I think he was saying, go out and hunt, calm down, pay attention. And that's really what has been in it for me, an opportunity really for two things. An opportunity to be exposed to and to work with leaders like this. In business all the time, you get to meet clever people, you get to meet people who can do stuff, you get to meet people who are able to make decisions. I think the privilege for me in working with these leaders is working with people who aren't just making decisions, they are dealing with tectonic forces. They are dealing with history and human nature and decades of neglect, but they're also dealing with optimism and hope and determination. And to be in a room where those forces are being dealt with, to be in a room with leaders who demonstrate immense courage in the way they do it, is for me one of the most startling opportunities of my life. And when someone says to you, would you mind getting involved in a little bit of nation building, it's a hard thing to say no to, particularly when you have the same hopes for your children as these people have for theirs. Thank you very much.